WPFW, Washington. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. Larry Appelbaum here with the Sound of Surprise till 6 o'clock. Today, we mark the passing of one of the pillars of the Washington, D.C. jazz community, Lawrence Wheatley, who just finished playing Weird Blues. It's from a rare, unpublished recording. I want to thank Lincoln Ross for bringing that up today. We're going to celebrate the music, the life, the legacy of Lawrence Wheatley. He touched, I think, every musician who tried to play creative music here in Washington, D.C. And we're going to talk a little bit about his life and his career, and I am joined now by people, peers and proteges, people who knew Lawrence throughout his life, and they're going to help us celebrate his memory. First of all, I want to thank Lorenz Wheatley, Lawrence's son. Lorenz is also a saxophonist. Thank you for coming up. Also thanks to Andrew White, saxophonist, scholar, and jazz entrepreneur, or maybe we should say publisher. Yeah, whatever works.
That's real good.
Yeah, okay. Also thanks to Richard Abu Spencer, percussionist, who probably goes back to the late 50s with Lawrence, yeah?
Late 50s?
Yeah, okay, we're going to talk with him. Also thanks to Peter Muldoon, guitarist, who had been working with Lawrence at the Columbia Station for the jam sessions. And then Lincoln Ross is also going to be joining us. He's sort of out in the lobby. He's got a lot of rare things that he brought up, and he's also known Lawrence for many, many years. So I guess we should try and set the stage for our listeners who really didn't know Lawrence, at least not personally, let's try to establish some basic facts. And maybe I should start with Lorenz. Lawrence Wheatley was born here in Washington, D.C.?
Yes, he was.
What year?
In 1934. December 28th. Matter of fact, Earl Father Hines was also born on December 28th.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
okay, so
yeah.
What neighborhood did he grow up in? Do you know?
Down here, I guess in the Shaw area initially, and eventually uptown, at least what I know. Of course, he preceded me, obviously, but he's spent a lot of time in the Mount Pleasant and 16th Street Heights area. He was on Meridian Place, and of course he hung out downtown where all the clubs were, off 14th Street and down and further down. So,
do you know where he went to high school?
He went to Armstrong.
Okay.
Matter of fact, he would tell me how he and Duke Ellington went to the same school, and he would say, as a matter of fact, he and Duke Ellington have something in common in as much as they never graduated from high school from Armstrong, but both of them had a very prolific career.
Armstrong produced lots of great musicians over the years, yeah? So maybe I should also turn to Andrew White. I know in your book, Everybody Loves the Sugar, there's some material about Lawrence, and I'd like to ask you how you first met Lawrence, under what circumstances, and what was your first impressions?
Okay, well, I'd like to I'm Andrew White, saxophonist and music publisher, and I'm very happy to be here to celebrate Lawrence's legacy. I'd like to precede what I'm going to read from the Sugar Book by saying that Art Blakey used to say, I heard him say this a lot on many of his gigs, please support your musicians by buying their phonograph recordings, because the record industry is the lifeblood of jazz. I don't know how many times I heard him say that. But the jam session, this is me talking now, the jam session is, I don't know whether it's before the record companies or after, but if it's after, it's the next step in terms of its importance to jazz. And Lawrence, to me, represented that for all the time I knew him. I met him in September of 1960. And so that sets the stage for this section out of my autobiography on page 250. I'd like to read 3 short sections to set everything up. It'll show how I met Lawrence and also emphasize and display his importance to jam sessions in Washington, D.C.
I think that'd be great for you to set the stage in your own voice.
Right, okay. Again, this is page 250, and this section is called The Jam Sessions. Around the corner and 2 blocks away from Abart's at 11th and U Streets Northwest was the Bohemian Caverns. Shirley Horn, she was a singer and a pianist, and her trio were working there 6 nights a week. On Saturday and Sunday afternoons, they held matinees at the Caverns. The pianist was Lawrence Wheatley. At these sessions, visiting musicians were allowed to sit in. On Monday nights, the Shirley Horn Trio was not working, and other local groups would fill in. Lawrence Wheatley has been, and still is one of the most important figures on the Washington, D.C. jazz scene. Any number of jazz luminaries, including myself, can attest to his effort in helping to nurture and develop talent through his participation and supervision in the D.C. jazz jam session scene. He's been like the ultimate mentor in helping folks get started on many levels of this business. This next section is called Launched. It was my first Saturday afternoon matinee that really launched me in Washington, D.C. The word was already out that I was here, but sitting in with working bands is not the same, nor does it mean the same thing as playing in a jam session, which is really what those Caverns matinees were. These matinees were like showcases, and that's what I was looking for, a place to show off. Make no mistake about it. I don't care how informal the setting is, how poorly the resident rhythm section plays, or how poorly the visiting soloists play. The jam session is the most relaxed and concentrated place to show your stuff. I don't care who you are. For showcase purposes, you'll always show up better at a jam session. That's my opinion, of course. And as a band leader who is frequently looking for talent, my first choice and first place to listen and look for it is at a jam session. So let it be said, so let it be done. Here we go. Hit time. I played my first Bohemian Caverns matinee jam session with Lawrence Wheatley on the piano on a Saturday afternoon in mid-September of 1960. I made my hit on my very first solo, Dizzy Gillespie's A Night in Tunisia. I played the melody in ensemble, and when the time came for the famous four-measure break, I lit out with Lou Donaldson's break from the Art Blakey at Birdland record made in the mid-50s. That was it. I wiped out everybody and everything. When the band came back in with Lawrence sitting there at the piano, the audience was howling, screaming, applauding, and catcalling while I was playing, and it took them at least 16 bars to subside. I finished that solo, played on the rest of the tunes in the set, and that was that. One of the club owners, Tony Taylor, hit on me as soon as I came off the bandstand. He asked me if I could come back on Monday night to sit in. I said yes, came back Monday night, sat in, brought that house down, and Tony offered me the Monday night gigs. I don't remember if I ever played another weekend matinee with Lawrence Wheatley, but I played all of the Monday nights from mid-October up until the end of December of 1960. I think Tony had a method to his madness by hiring me so soon right there at that first jam session. You see, there was no admission charge at those jam sessions. So I think, and I think it's still like that now. It's changed a little bit up in New York. So I think Tony simply wanted to see and hear the reaction of paying customers on a paying gig, even if I wasn't being paid. But that was cool for me. At 18 years of age, I could afford to give up at least one gig on speculation, in a major market at that time, right? So I did, and it paid off. Over the next 2.5 months, I worked the Monday nights, built up a repertoire, built up a band, built up an audience, and built up a following. So now you're on your own for the next few pages. Check out the history of the JFK Quintet. That was the precursor. Those Monday nights were the precursor to the JFK Quintet. And
So in some ways, this helped launch your career, at least here in Washington.
it did.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've always thought of that. Yeah. And it was Lawrence who was running the jam sessions then. As I haven't seen Lawrence since the One Step Down closed. So that's
In fact, I used to see you at the jam sessions. You didn't play, but you were sitting in the back row at the One Step.
Like I just said, I'm a band leader.
Yeah.
Right? And so regardless of why I'm there, I am an employer, and I'm always looking for talent. I have hired some fellas, well, at least one fella, Alan Johnson, the piano player. He's worked with me for some years. And I listened to him for about 6 years at jam sessions before I hired him. I'm an elitist band leader, so I can wait as long as I want. But several band leaders can't wait 6 years.
So we're going to talk a little bit more about the jam.
Mm.